Well, hi again, everybody. Welcome to another episode of 100 Yards of Football. I'm Harper Lebel, and this is our draft prospect show, along with Logan Landers, our producer and engineer, Brian LeBel, who joins me in replace of Vincent Turner. Vincent not able to be with us today. He'll be back with us again next week. And Brian, we're going to talk about a guy that when you say Marshall, right, we're thinking maybe Thundering Herd from days past with Chad Pennington and Randy Moss. But Mike Green is going to be a guy, he's going to be a difference maker when he plays in the National Football League. He's 6'4", he's 245 pounds, but what an impressive young man. A lot of things to talk about with this guy. Let's just give first impressions about Mike Green and what he's been able to do at the college level.
All he did was lead the whole field in sacks last year, which is, no big deal. But man, his tape jumps out at you. What he's able to do is I know the term special gets thrown on a lot, but it seems like it.
He's 6'4", 245 pounds. Yes, we said Marshall. He was the Sun Belt Player of the Year, by the way. 17 sacks this past season. A lot of things on film that I know you've seen that are very, very impressive. He almost makes it look like it's too easy. And at 245 pounds, I'm thinking, well, gosh, he needs to be 250, 260. Myles Garrett is a 275-pound guy, bigger. I don't know if he's as effective against some of the great guys that he's gone against. Good teams. You mentioned Ohio State before we went on the air. His ability to go against better top grade competition and still be able to get to the quarterback, it just jumps off the chart in terms of what I've been able to see. How about you?
Yeah. He's a guy where if he wasn't draft eligible this year, I think there'd be quite a few teams ready to back up the Brinks truck saying, hey, why don't you come to, South Bend, Indiana? Why don't you come play at Ohio State? Why don't you come play at Texas? Why don't you come play at Michigan? Because, what he's able to do on film is tremendous. It's crazy how quick he is. He's got good hands. He's relentless too. His motor, he's always full speed. He's always going wherever the football is. He's tracking it. He's trying to find it. He's trying to either make a play, a tackle, or trying to rip it out of the ball carrier's hands.
Talk a little bit about his background. He went to Virginia for a year. Then he gets to Marshall. I guess he had a redshirt year previously, or because he's only listed as a sophomore. And then this past season, he basically just breaks out. But Marshall has lost their head coach, and they've got a bunch of guys that have left. There's some turmoil going on with the school, but at the right place at the right time, they end up winning the Sun Belt. They were 10-4 overall. He was at the right place at the right time, really takes advantage of it, plays so well against the competition that he went against. Does that transition into a NFL caliber guy going against Pro Bowlers?
Yeah, I think it does. He played a really good game. Being at Marshall, obviously, like you said, you're not going to have top tier competition. You're not going to be able to put that on your resume, but he still held his own out there against Ohio State. That's the game you look at. If you're going to pick up the film, he still picked up a sack. He was still, they knew where he was. They said, hey, we got to account for this guy. And when you have the best team in the country saying, we got to know where that guy is, that's a big deal. And Mike, he lived up to, I don't know what the expectations were for himself. I would assume, maybe they're lofty, but he exceeded everything that he could have in order to put his name right there in the mix as far as the top edge players in the sport.
Yeah. One of the things that really impressed me is he didn't need to bull rush.
Yeah.
Even though he can, but his speed, he has a little bit of I'm going to call it a dip, where he goes under the outstretched arm, under it. He's got good hands, but his get to the ball ability, it just looks like you're watching a man amongst boys at times. But he's going against guys that are technically better, higher recruited, 5 stars versus him being a 3-star coming out of high school. He went to Virginia, don't get me wrong, but he wasn't the top guy selected. And his speed is absolutely game changer for me. That you can't coach that. So that's why I mentioned the 245. I'm almost okay with that, because if you can get a guy that's that fast, and then as he matures, again, he's a young guy. I think that just plays a pivotal role in why he's up the charts as high as he is right now.
I think he fits the Khalil Mack phenotype, which we would kind of disregard the players of the smaller schools that are lighter, that are faster, whatever. But Khalil Mack's had probably a Hall of Fame career,
Yeah.
And I think if you look at the build, if you look at the quickness, if you look at, and you were talking about the bendability, that's what a lot of them call it, the being able to just bend and get around guys, to just torque his body, just to be able to move and say, yep, you can't put your hands on me. And if you do, it's going to be a hold because you're wrapping me up illegally. But he just, that was, when I'm watching the film, that's what I thought. I'm like, this is Khalil Mack, based on what he's able to do, based on what he brings to the table. I think the only reason why he's not higher up on draft boards and he's not more talked about is because, well, he played at Marshall and there's not a ton of film on him. You know,
Right.
obviously leaving Virginia, he's only got one real good year of film on him. But man, that was probably the best year as far as a pass rusher that anybody's had in college football.
If he's an SEC or a Big Ten guy, he's a #1 pick, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He's up there with Cam Ward and Travis Hunter, and we're talking about if he's at Georgia, Alabama, we're like, hey, you just can't miss. Got to draft this kid.
Right. We mentioned his speed, his hands, all that kind of stuff. I think he's got a second move. He doesn't have a bull rush. I think he uses his speed to get out of, like, if he's an edge, he's on the outside. So in order to maintain against a 330-pound guy, the speed is what gets him where he needs to be. But eventually, he's got to get a little bit stronger. Doesn't he? A little more hip flexion and power, and just ability to be able to take on a guy that outweighs him by close to 100 pounds.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure by the time the combine rolls around, he won't be 245. He'll probably be 251, 252, which will help him out a little bit. I think any team that drafts him is going to say, okay, can you play at 260? Because if he could do what he's doing at 260 now, it's a whole different ballgame. But his ability to put his foot in the dirt and spin and pivot back in it's in a flash too. It's crazy how quick it is, because as a 330-pound offensive lineman, I'm trying to get back, I'm trying to get in my stance, and I'm trying to, get set to keep him from going around me. But if he could just stop on a dime and turn back in, it's almost unblockable. It really is. And it's just, he might play around with you, and the next time you think, okay, he's going to spin back in, maybe he fakes, pivots, and then goes around you anyways. But what he's able to do, I think raw is definitely the term to use for his talent, just because of where he came from and, his pedigree, and maybe trying to do it at the next level. But the talent is there.
Well, it's interesting. Another local guy here went to Clemson and came to Atlanta. His get-off time was absolutely amazing. His ability to be going full speed at the snap of the ball was Vic Beasley. But Vic was like 245 pounds, and I thought he played at 245, meaning that when he got into a one-on-one situation with the tackle, he looked like he was lighter, and the power difference was there. The speed always had, but that to me was the downfall, in my opinion, for Vic, is that he never got any bigger. He used only his speed and didn't develop a second portion to his game. I need to be able to go into a guy and not just have to rely on going around it, because tackles would set back off. They're setting back off on Mike Green. They have to. But for him to be able to use his power to use that against him, like Reggie White would do. I mean, he's not Reggie White, but I'm just saying that there's plenty of room for him to improve. And what do you see for Mike Green? Obviously, there's some Carter and some other big guys that are bigger names that are in the loop, but I'm not disappointed if he comes to my team.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, this class, as far as edge rushers, is, someone's going to get 2 edge rushers. There's someone who's probably needing the help, and they're probably going to get a day 1 guy and a day 2, maybe even a 3rd-round guy, just because there's so much depth at the position. I think that's Green's only downfall. If he was in the draft last year and he had similar numbers, I don't see why he's not a top 12 guy. He's a lock. It's the pool right now is just so diluted with just so much talent, but that doesn't mean he can't play. And that doesn't mean he can't maybe be a steal for someone maybe late in the 1st round, maybe mid 1st round. It just depends. The combine will change a bunch of things. Obviously, some guys, based on draft grades, there's 3 or 4 defensive ends that all are right there, and Mike could separate himself from the pack if he does really well there. But it's, as far as the Beasley comparison, I think Green has a better motor. I think it doesn't really turn off. I think until the whistle is blown, I know that's the old cliche, he's relentless, he's after it, and he's going to do everything in his power to get after the football until the referee tells him to stop. Okay.
Well, very impressed in this past season with games against Virginia Tech, against Ohio State, in the conference championship against Louisiana Lafayette, against Appalachian State. He's had some great games that you could look at to see what we're trying to confirm to you. He's fast. He gets around the edge. He can get to the quarterback, and he just makes plays. He's Mike Green. Any final thoughts you have, Brian?
As a Falcons fan, I would not be upset if this guy is there, and if he's wearing red and black at the end of the first round, wouldn't be too upset. And I think there's plenty of teams probably in the middle to late that feel the same way, that, hey, this kid could play, and I would not mind having him line up on Sundays for me.
Yeah, he's going to be something to watch. A little bit light, but everything else is he's NFL ready. The speed is there, the heart, the determination, the hard work that he does. He's going to make somebody a much better football team. He's Mike Green. He's the edge rusher for Marshall. We're glad to bring him and so many other different players to you folks. We appreciate getting to talk about all these guys on our Draft Prospect Show. So for Logan Landers, our producer and engineer, for Brian LeBel, who's with us today, for Vincent Turner, who's our host and founder here of 100 Yards of Football, we want to say thank you for tuning in, everybody. Have a fantastic rest of your day.